Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, I'm really excited. You guys can see it written all over my face, and the reason for it is pretty simple. I've been trying to get this young guy, this young man on my podcast for quite some time. I heard about him through Sid Johnson, MECAP manager, owner, founder, and I might as well call him Mr. Talent because he's always showcasing some great talent locally and abroad. But this one guy that he was telling me about, he says, let me get Sid down. Dre, you need to put this artist on your radio station. And I said, well, who is he? And you just need to listen to him. His name is Storm. So I said, Storm. I said, okay, let me listen to his music. So I listened to it, and long story short, brother was hooked. I mean, from the way in which he sings, the harmony, the instrumentals, and you got to realize I'm not old. I'm not telling my age, but I grew up when I really think music was music, especially R&B, where you had the Whispers, you had the Ozzy Brothers, you had Alexander O'Neal, you had those guys that can, Roger Troutman. That's who Storm really reminds me a little bit with the way he does his music. And let's not forget Indiana's own Babyface. But today, to tell a story of clearly musical genius, Indiana's own. I know he's gonna be mad when I say this, but he let the cat out the bag. Indiana's own, along with Babyface, because he grew up in that era. The one, the only, Storm. Welcome to the show, big guy.
Thank you so much. It's great to have be on here with you, Andre. I've heard a lot about your show, and I'm really proud to be able to be here.
You know what? Thank you. I appreciate that. What I didn't know was you're from Indianapolis, Indiana. Where did you grow up here? Tell me a little bit about being in Indianapolis, Indiana, for you.
Man, I grew up on the east side, which, 38th Street, Keystone, around that area, and went to school, Catholic school there, and grew up playing all the little clubs and different things with, a lot of the guys in high school. But east side, like rural street, and let's see, Sherman Way, Sherman Oaks. Sherman Drive.
Sherman Drive.
They got a Sherman Drive out here.
Look, you've been away for quite some time, I take it.
Yeah, yes.
So let me ask a question. You mentioned being in a band and music. When did you start really gravitating to music? About what age, what grade? How did that happen for you?
Well, see, I'll be telling my age when I talk about this.
I know.
But the Jacksons were out, okay. And I was a big fan of them. And my father, Dudley Starms, took me to see the concert, so, like growing up and seeing all these artists like James Brown and the Jacksons and the Commodores and these different people, seeing them in concert really inspired me. So, and then I started to understand that some of these guys were my age. So it's like, okay, well, as a kid, they were doing this. So I said, well, I can do this as a kid,
Right.
So I practice. My grandfather was a jazz musician, actually, that some people pretty well know. He used to work at, he used to play at Cotton Club back in the day.
Wow.
That was way back in the day. Before you and me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, but he, because of listening to people like Michael Jackson and Prince and these guys, my father saw the talent in me, and he let me work with a lot of guys. Some guys were 10 years older than I was, you know. But we started doing shows in different places. The little band that we had, and we got to play in grade school and did some stuff in high school and different things. So that's kind of the start. You know.
When you say your grandfather saw the talent in you, I know you're vocally inclined, but you also play multiple instruments. Were you talent? How advanced was your talents on both sides of the spectrum when your grandfather acknowledged to you that he saw potential in you?
You know, it's funny because my grandfather, whose name was Dudley Starms, and then my dad, his name was Dudley Starms. Okay, and sometimes I get them mixed up, but and I mean that in the sense of who did what, to get me started. Right.
Right.
My grandfather, um, as a pure inspiration to me, got me started. My father actually got me out and doing things, different places, playing at clubs, and got me working with different groups and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
How now? This is I'm keeping you in Indianapolis for a while. I know you're in California right now. I'm keeping you right here in Indianapolis right now with this story. You teamed up with a well-known Indiana's own babyface, Kenny. What was that like for you guys? And sharing each other's dreams and aspirations. Because I know when Babyface started out, I knew his bodyguard at the time, and uh, was good friends with a guy that protected him because you guys were famous. Y'all needed those bodyguards at that time. Um, but Indianapolis was not a place to be discovered, so to speak. How did you guys resonate a plan to further your career, knowing that there would be a stumbling block here in Indianapolis?
You know what? To preface that, before even met Kenny, we I was doing like little nightclubs here. Like there was a place called the Demonstrators Club, if you
Mhm.
recall that back in the day. And sometimes his band would be there, and then sometimes my band would be there, and then sometimes we'd be there together rehearsing for the nights, the show that night or whatever. But we uh, Kenny got involved at some point, in his career with a band called Manchild.
Yeah.
Yes, and from his work with Manchild, he became, a regional success musically.
Mhm.
So, they were going all different places like Chicago and, Ohio and different places and, sponsoring or playing their hits,
Right.
And at that time, I was, like just doing nightclubs and different things. And at a certain point, Manchild broke up, and Kenny was looking for something else to do to foster his uh, talent,
Right.
And so through his manager, Sid Johnson,
Mhm.
he came to me and said that Kenny wanted to form a band, So um, he brought me in as a second guitarist, vocalist, and some of the other guys. You probably know his brother Kevin Edmonds, who
Yeah.
is a singer for After Seven. He was in the band, and a couple other great guys. It was a great band, and we didn't really have a vision for what we thought was going to happen, but we just let things play out,
Mhm.
basically.
When you
You
say
know.
let things play out, did they play out for the best for all of you guys? Because eventually he wind up going doing what he had to do, but you still had your career. So how did him moving on affect you in making sure that your dreams are discovered just as much as his was?
Well, that wasn't necessarily a concern. I don't think of situations. This business of music is is I don't want to say cutthroat, but it's the Wild West, if you know what I mean. So it's like you sometimes don't have a grasp or can't get a grasp on an understanding of, well, what is the next step for you or what's going to happen. So you just kind of go with your own thought process on
Mhm.
things. After the band broke up that we had together, um, one of the members of the band actually moved to California, and I was still in Indianapolis doing this and that or whatever. Called me up and said that they needed a guitar player for a band out there. So um, I took a plane, and my buddy Sonny hooked me up with these guys, and we did a lot of work in the kind of in the LA Basin area, you know, and Oxnard and different places like that. Um, that was pretty much what I decided to do. Yeah.
When you wind up going to LA, what was the experience like for you at that time? Because LA is probably at that particular point in time, that's really where you want to be. Atlanta was just now really coming up on the map, but let's get real. The music industry was out there in LA. What was different from a northern Indiana man going to California in the music industry? What was the culture shock for you?
It was big for me. It was everything I thought it would be. Because when I, you know, at that time, you know, it was the 80s, and the 80s that everybody was doing just, it was like the music industry itself was supercharged or something. You know, it's like a whole different thing was going on musically. You had Larry Graham, who was out there, coming up with a whole different sound musically for R&B, his bass plucks and different things. And then you had Prince had just dropped an album, you know, and we were around the same age and stuff. So it was like, you know, really inspiring to see people like him coming and doing his music out here. So I got a chance to really get around, you know, meet a lot of different people and work with a few different, you know, some different people.
Mm.
And it, it was it was great, actually, to tell you the truth about it, you know. But there was a period of time where as artists, where we when we first got out here, there was a little harder to try to, you know, get things going, you know. So it takes work, period.
What do you
You
mean
know?
when you say it was harder getting things going? Was that getting used to the different style of music genre? Because I know being from the South at a younger age, certain music wasn't heard in certain parts of the South, and certain music wasn't heard up north. But people need to realize that we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, so music didn't travel at the speed of thought back then. So
Right,
what
right.
what was the hardest transition for you coming from there and actually trying to adapt your style of music or your style of play into a culture that really, and you're talking to LA, they were probably more advanced in the musical because that's where it is before it even came up to the Indiana or the Midwest areas.
Um, you know, you had to bend yourself, basically, is what happens with artists who, or at least I found for myself coming from Indianapolis. You know, you want to do this style of music or you want to do this or that, you know, but a lot of times you have to go with what is dropped in your lap. I did some work with a few other people. There was a guy named Kevin Kendrick who was keyboard player for a group called Cameo. He also came from Indianapolis, and we kind of hooked up a couple of times, and he kind of took me around to some different people, and I met Andre of Outkast, and we worked on some things together, and um, it was just, you know, you had to kind of go with who was available for you to work with,
Mhm.
and I ran into Dimples through Kevin, and if you remember Dimples Field, he had a song out called "Papers."
Oh yeah.
That was back in, yeah. back in the 80s. And I did a lot of studio work with him. But Dimples was notorious for not paying, so that didn't
So,
bode so well.
so this is what I'm getting ready to say with this. Most of your your music journey was being a guitarist.
That's correct.
When did it shift? When did you realize that? And I shared this with another musician we had on the show as well. He was also a guitarist. And when you're a guitarist, you don't really get a chance to, even if you can sing like you can sing, you don't get a chance to really showcase that talent because you're there to play your instrument. When did the shift change for you to say, you know what, this is cool. I don't want to be playing the guitar. I really want to be center stage. I want to showcase the fact that I am a gifted writer. How did when did all that change for you to where you actually took your name and put it on the front billboards?
There was at a certain point in this whole uh, my schooling here, I ran into some other guys, that I was working with, and the thing about it is, even though I was playing primarily guitar, I was also doing backup vocals.
Mm.
So um, the honing your skills on that was important too, so that you can make sure that you don't go flat or
Right.
so you have to work on all your skills. So it was something that I wanted to just make sure was good enough to be able to work with a lot of different people.
Mm.
There was a group called Broken Toys that I eventually started working with here in LA, and uh, initially that group was put together to back up a female vocalist, and it some changes came about, and she ended up moving on. And at that point, the band didn't have a vocalist. So Steve, who was the actual leader of the band, wanted me to front the band. So uh, I initially reluctantly, signed on, but I relished the experience, and we did a lot of nice stuff together too. So
So
that's where.
what's the difference, Storm, between being behind the scenes? Now you've accepted the role of being your own man. How much more harder is that for you? How much more pressure is that for you to succeed? Because the let's get real. The big picture is you want to sell your music. You want to be, Billboard's number one seller. You want to be a recognized name in the music industry. Now you got that shot. What was the toughest part of that journey for you now? Because now you are the man.
Well, the industry itself has changed so much
Mhm.
from when I was a kid to what's going on now, and I'm saying that because in order to be that person that you're talking about, it takes a whole different. It can be easier and it can be harder, and it can be harder in the respect that if you're trying to go with a large label and do that whole thing, it's not that kind of world anymore. I mean, there you got all these little people who they pull in who are essentially kids, and these kids, they're just they bring them more for the look than they do say this their sound. You um, Even though some of them are quite talented, I don't get me wrong, but for me, I find that what I have to do especially these days, is guide my own path pretty much. It's not a world where I'm going to be looking for trying to go with MCA or Motown or something like that, with a large label. So it has to be done different. And I don't find it a hindrance. I find it just a different type of work space, if you understand what I'm saying.
Hmm. So how
Yeah.
did you come up? How did you come up with your unique sound? You mentioned Larry Graham. I love Larry Graham. I love anybody who plays the bass, man, because I play the bass in the guitar. But I'm a bass guy.
Awesome.
Love the bass. But Larry Graham has his own style. Roger Troutman broke out with his own style. Lionel Richie went off on his own from the Commodores and had tremendous success. We see even the groups like Cameo, you know, done some stuff. But how did you develop your sound, and what was the reason behind your sound? Because remember when the show was coming on, I was playing my favorite song by you, Dreamer or a Nightmare, and that I noticed this part about all your songs. I can't sing like you. I'm gonna try to get this. Ooh, like what? You know that is. It's almost like a rapper having a pitch or a hook. When you do that, ooh, and all your songs, I'm like, okay, is this his like hook? Like, tell me a little bit about how you develop your own unique sound.
It's not that deep really for me. I mean,
Come
and I,
on,
I say
man. You know it's deep.
I only reason why I say that is because I believe my belief is that we're all a compilation of our past experiences, So,
Okay.
we pick up something from somebody,
Right.
because we like it,
Right.
and sometimes it just is what it is, and that's what I think really happened with, I guess my particular, if you want to call it a sound, then that's what that is.
What was,
Um,
what was the experience
uh,
about that sound on? Because you said something that's really good. A lot of those hooks or whatever, or that one particular lyric that people recognize you by came from some type of experience. What was the experience that led you to that one particular sound?
there was, I mean, I guess you could say it was really like, the metastasization, the schooling of coming from Indianapolis to here, because there was a band back when I was growing up. It's called Little Murray and the Mantics. And you remember the stuff back in the day, was the what, Tavares and
Yeah.
Blue Magic and
Oh my God.
all these people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I love
And
some Blue Magic. Yeah.
but see, these guys, they I think as artists, even the guys that came after them still really kind of did a lot of what they, initially started out and put forward.
Mhm.
And so we're not really, we might do it a little differently,
Right.
but it's the same basic thing.
Where do you get your inspiration from for the songs that you write? Like I said, one of my favorite is definitely A Dreamer or a Nightmare. And you know what? I had to listen to that because I was like, okay, that sounds kind of. I thought it was first when I heard the title, I thought it was maybe like a Halloween type sound, But when I listened to it, I was like, okay, this has to be something from experience that he went through and stuff. So share a little bit about how you get creative with all the different songs that you come out with. And then the second part of that question is, which is out of all the songs that you produce and that you have produced, which two really stands out to you and why?
Okay. I think that musically, coming from I'm trying to remember your first part of your question because I wanted to answer that because it was so interesting to me. I mean, it was like the answer was going to be so interesting.
Like I was saying, like out of how do you come up with the inspiration to write all your songs? Because they do have
This
meaning behind
song,
it.
that particular song that you like, came from a friend of mine, and it's really funny because to me it was funny anyway. Um, he was talking about his girlfriend one day, right?
Yeah.
And I said, man, it's good that you like hooked up with this. Like she seems like a really nice girl and stuff. And he said, well, Kim, sometimes she's a dream and a nightmare. So that's where it came from.
Really?
The hook, and it happened to hit my head one day. And like I said, we're a compilation of all the things that are in our past,
Mhm.
and that just happened to hit me when I was working on the actual track. A lot of us attack music differently. Some of us, write tracks first, or write the music first, or sometimes you come up with an idea first. I've always been a guy who musically came up with the track first, and let that inspire whatever the vocal is going to be, or whatever the melody or the lead line or the what do they call it? The hook of the song. So that's where that came from.
Okay. And then the next
Yeah,
part of
but
that
when we
question.
talk about favorite songs and different
Yeah.
things, um, uh, I for me, my stuff is for me in my mind so different. Like Dreaming of Nightmare is completely different from I Believe in You, which is completely different from Make You Love Me, and so it's hard for me to say, okay, well, I like this better than this, or I like this better than that. I'm always trying to like come up with something that was uh, profound to me because of something I listened to before. I
Mm.
was a big Prince fan. I loved all his stuff and all his music, and still do, obviously today. But so he was a big inspiration, and um, a lot of the things he did, I tried to utilize some of that with pretty much everything that I do.
Let me ask you a question. The music industry has changed so much. Like you said, the 80s was like an explosion of great talent, great um, um, musical lyrics. You had like even I remember George Michael's coming out of nowhere with Wham, and then branching off. I was like, you had the British wave and all this. But my question is, we mentioned somebody that um, Sid Johnson in his let me call it his masterpiece as it comes to music. When when did you in your career, when was the moment that you realized that you needed to maybe consult with somebody like Uncle Jams to further your career, and more importantly, was it necessary to have somebody like that or in your corner to make sure that you was directed in the right path? And the second part of this question is, if you didn't have that outlet, what do you think you would have been like now? What do you think the handicaps would have been for you?
Well, working with Sid was always a joy, and the reason why I say that is because he's multi talented himself, and quite as kept. He and I had a band back in the day.
Oh, I didn't I
But
didn't know that.
okay, don't tell him I told you that. But but he because of his ear for talent, and because of his acumen for the business side of things, I feel pretty uh, fully blessed to have met him and to have gleaned an understanding of how things work uh, from him. So it was very helpful for me to join up with him and have him help me to do some of the things that I'm working on. So, yeah.
How did having somebody like that with him actually help your career? Like, do you think that there were decisions that you would have made that may have hindered your career had you not had somebody like him as either a mentor or at least a part in your life?
I think more than anything else is seeing him work inspired me,
Mm.
if you will, to do the things that I needed to do in order to make my talent known, and in order to be involved with different projects. Um, a lot of people, this industry is bereft with situations where artists or people who are like backup musicians
Mhm.
um, they don't care. The artist may not even care how great you are, but it's like attitude is very important,
Mhm.
and it's very important. Uh, you got two guys who can play, and one's like a little better playing wise, but if another guy has the right attitude, he may get the job, above a guy who's a virtuoso, because who wants to deal with a bunch of bullshit uh,
You just telling the truth.
exactly. Nobody wants to deal with a prima donna. Pretty much, that's it.
Let me ask you a question here. The music industry has changed drastically. Like we grew up where the function and brick and average white band, they played music. You know where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah.
Has this has this made you have to work harder with new technology versus old technology where you had the bands? You didn't have to really um micromanage the band. You guys were all on the same page. You bought that unique sound. Now everything is engineered. I mean, yeah, it's quicker, but being a musician, what's your take on it? Because you grew up in a different era that the young kids today, very few of them know the art. Let me use this word, the art of music.
It I miss the old days, and I say that in the sense that a lot of us guys who grew up having to play, the chitna circuit and scratch for it, really, really, we had to come with it. And if we didn't come with it, guess what? Okay, well, next week you're not there. So
Right.
um, these guys today, I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on the youth or anything like that, but
Mhm.
a lot of it, it comes easier to them in the sense that, okay, well, you grow up being more of a technology person, rather than knowing your acts per se, or playing, your guitar well, or playing your bass well,
Mhm.
or singing, a particular song that is catchy to a person. We had to learn how to hook somebody in, and that's why they call that the hook part of a song. A lot of times the thing that you remember the most about a particular song,
Mhm.
um, and sometimes that's a a couple musical notes together, or several, or and sometimes it has to do with, like you say, like a dream and a nightmare. Okay, well, which is, a verbal thing, but and sometimes it's a combination of both things coming together. um, but I miss the old days because you don't have that same uh, push, that and it depends on who you work with too. If you're out there working as a working musician in LA, a lot of the guys who work in the clubs, or work clubs, are people who have grown up in, this whole music thing that I went through. So there's not a lot of really young guys that who aren't inspired by that
Mhm.
are playing the clubs. So I've met some younger guys that are extremely talented, but it seems to me like it's fewer and fewer, as time goes along.
Mhm.
And I hope that at some point, um, something happens to, get the youth to really, dig back in there, and because like we talked about, when we were coming up, there were these people that were out there. Prince had his own style.
Right.
Graham had his own style. Zapp had his own style. And you don't really see that kind of, I don't know what to call it, that kind of talent anymore.
What has been the biggest obstacle for you with all this new innovation? How is that? How is that? What has been the most difficult part for you? I don't think nothing hinders you because you don't have that type of mindset to let anything hinder you. But with the new technology, how much of your musical genius had to be altered to adapt with the new digital age.
I hear what you're saying, and a lot of times I'll be writing a song and I'll come up with an idea. And the biggest thing for me is like always thinking, okay, well, how does this fit with today's sound?
Yeah.
And uh, you bring up a really strong point there because um, in order to stay relevant, sometimes we have to, okay, well, let me go listen to, what these kids are doing over here or what this person's doing here, because they are what people listen to. And if you're not doing uh, kind of the same thing, they don't realize it, but they're locked into um, the sound of the day,
Right.
you know, and that's where that term comes from. Okay, well, he sounds a little dated.
Mhm. Does that does that does that play on your mind a lot that you have to switch the gears almost to a whole new different sound versus what you originally came in with because you have to stay relevant. Like we see a lot of the old you got Alexander O'Neal who's back on tour. You got the Isley brothers. These guys are like back on tour. But when I heard that Alexander O'Neal was back on tour, yeah, he still sounds great. You can't mess up an Alexander O'Neal ballad. It's gonna sound good if he sings it if he's 100 years old. But you tapped on something that was interesting. How does that make you feel knowing that your sound has to be altered so much, maybe so frequently because technology changes like this at the snap in order for you to stay relevant, to keep being able to pay your bills, but more importantly, to keep your dream of being a musician alive?
Sound changed a lot, when when they started coming up with synthesizers. When that came about, then the sounds started changing a lot in the recordings. Then you had people, that started using drum machines more, so the electronicness took away a lot of the warmth of the music that was what we grew up with. I think that's my opinion, but um, it's always a thought process of mine to try to be um, timely, as it were. Try to stay on top of what the sound of today is. So it is something that always draws in my mind and makes me um, second guess,
Right.
as it were. Okay, well, what I'm doing. Um, I did a song for a group that's under the MECAP label for a group called Stars of the Bazaar,
I love those
and it's
guys.
called Julie Maple is the name of the song. Get a chance to listen to it, check it out, and because it's old school. And the bass player for Kenny Edmonds, his bass player was the bass player on this particular song, the recording, and it's kind of it's a really old school thing. And I remember when I was asking the guy who was the vocalist for the group, I said, well, what did you think when you first heard the song? And he said, well, I was kind of like, I never really done anything like this before. I thought he was really just being nice in the sense of, okay, well, I don't really like the song that much, but
Yeah.
you know, it plays on your mind sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you this question. You happily married, 17 years to Renee. You have children of your own. It's beautiful when you have children because you know what, especially being a musician, you can kind of they can kind of pick your brain and say, "Hey, Pop, you need to do this," or blah blah blah. How much of a collaboration is your family in your music career? Like, how much information do they share with you to keep you relevant, and more importantly, to keep you where you don't get pissed because you have to change with the time. And let's get real, we're not getting any younger. It's hard to catch
Yeah.
up with all these people. So how involved are they in your music journey?
You know what? They're more inspirational than anything else. I mean, they always. I find for me that they always push me, and my middle son, his line is always, you know what, Dad never gave up. He never always just, he just always did what he, thought
Yeah.
he wanted to do. So that was always helpful me. And my oldest son, he is actually a artist in his own right. He sings and raps and writes his own stuff as well, and he's trying to put that out there with some other business stuff. But I'm really inspired a lot by the younger generation in the respect of their business acumen. They really push to do the things that they want to do. My oldest son here again, he has his own business, and that's something that I always wanted to do, and he inspired me and my wife to actually come up with something that we call Starm's Enterprises Nonprofit, which is a vehicle that we use to bring together funds and people to help the foster youth here in LA. After they get to a certain age and they age out of the system, then a lot of times they, are, off to the wayside. They don't have any place to go. They can become indigent. And what we do with Starms Enterprises nonprofit is raise funds for them. So that's something that is very inspirational to me and something that I really push hard for. And here again, it goes back to, my sons kind of, you know, being who they are by um, doing their business and handling their business and inspiring me in that respect.
I had no idea that information. Thank you for sharing that. And on this platform, we definitely educate and empower people. How can the viewer support that particular cause that you got? How can they reach out to you for that particular project that you're doing to help foster kids? Because you know what, you don't think about things like that. Like literally, what happens to these kids once they turn of what we consider legal age? I never knew they just put them out and don't have a plan in action. And my hats off to you and your family for bringing that to the attention. But how can the viewers be a part of that and reach out to you to help fund or whatever?
Um, we typically have an event every year, and leading up to that event, what we do is we have people bring in any help that they can. We go to businesses and ask for funds or even products. There was a thing that we did a couple years back where at Christmas time we uh, went to a lot of businesses and had them give us um, ear ear pods and sliders and jackets and different things, so that we could give them to kids at Christmas time and have them, not wanting for some of the things that they want. Um, uh, right now, we do have a website. If they look up Starms Enterprises nonprofit,
Mhm.
then they can find that on the web and uh, help us help somebody else. That's but I'm going to be pushing more of that out here in the next couple of years. I'm also an artist, so selling my artwork along with the music, and every there's a certain amount that goes to that fund out of everything that we do. So
Sounds like a winner. Speaking of
yeah.
funding, before we wrap up, there's a few more questions I want to ask. We see that the artists now have lost the ideal of radio play and amplifying their niche. What's your take on the difference with marketing your stuff with radio and television versus trying to upload thousands and thousands of pieces of musical stuff on the social media platforms like Spotify, Pandora, and to get your music out? What's your take on that?
um I really am not a a fan of Spotify. I have to say, because they take so much from the artist. It takes so much for an artist these days, and even the young, artists, to get so many people in to get a dollar. You got to have millions of people in order to get, some kind of change that's going to be something that you can actually call a wage of any kind. So I hate the fact that a lot of these multinational corporations uh, have that wherewithal to take so much from artists. I There are other ways to do to get your marketing out there, and a lot of kids are marketing themselves, in terms of their own websites and their own, going to TV and so on and so forth. And Apple seems to be one of the best ways musically to get a certain amount of your wages from um, not from production, but from um, publishing.
Right.
Yeah. So, if you publish well and if you get your music to like television and different things like that, then it can make your path a lot easier.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm really not a fan of this new way of doing things, so much.
So, what's in store for you next?
I'm working on an EP right now. Our 10 songs. I want to get that done next year. I'm planning on pulling in, or rather, here, yeah, 2025. I'm looking at getting out and playing different places more so, um, and that's going to be my push to get my artistry out there.
Right.
So that's what I really plan to do. That along with utilizing Starm's Enterprises nonprofit to um, raise funds for folks and these the kids that are having a hard time, and that will be it'll be all working together. That's what I want to do.
So
That's what
the biggest question here before we wrap up is when you plan on making a concert tour back to your hometown? You're on the
definitely
spot.
this
You're on the spot.
year. Definitely this year. Definitely this year. I wanted to make it was I guess Sid's birthday was the other day,
Yeah.
uh, and they had a big party for him there. Uh, Scheduling and some other things just made it impossible for me to get there. But this year coming up, I'm definitely going to be involved with a couple of things that MECAP is going to do to uh, uh, help push them along a little further, and push me along too. you know.
You know what, Storm? I wish you the best. My door is always open for you. You guys can listen to all his music on the commercial-free station, iambeast Radio, and listen to "A Dream of a Nightmare" and other Storm hits as well.
I
Storm,
want to thank you.
Storm,
Thank you so much for having me.
do me a favor. Leave the viewers with what keeps you in that beast mindset. You deserve that opportunity. What keeps you going all the time, big guy?
Um, I'm a kind of guy that, people ask, say, okay, well, what do you want to be known for? I say,
Yeah.
hey, I just want to be known as being a nice guy. I just want to be people to know that I was a nice guy. I am a nice guy, that we can, and being able to help people. That's that's what makes me tick.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the one, the only Indiana's own Storm on the Andre the Beast Crayton show.